We all want to stay informed. But who has the time to wade through all the noise, right? Well, you came to the right place because today we're diving deep into the TikTok situation in the U.S.
Definitely a lot of moving pieces there.
Huge story. Yeah, I mean, over 170 million people use the app just in the U.S.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And now it might be banned entirely unless its owner ByteDance divests its U.S. operations.
Right, the Chinese company ByteDance.
Exactly. And to get to the bottom of all this, we're looking at some recent reports, even statements from former President Trump and ByteDance themselves.
Oh, wow. So right from the source.
Yeah, getting all sides. So I guess our mission today is to really understand the reasons for this potential ban. What are the latest actions being taken, and why is this such a difficult situation for everyone to figure out?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the core issue here is really the U.S. government's concern about the app. And that's been consistent across both the Biden and Trump administrations.
So it's not just a partisan thing.
Not at all. They both view TikTok as a potential risk, a way for the Chinese government to maybe spy or even manipulate public opinion.
Really serious stuff.
Yeah, and it's serious enough that Congress passed a bipartisan law basically telling ByteDance they have 6 months to sell their controlling stake or face a nationwide ban.
Wow. So a ticking clock.
You could say that, yeah.
So what's been happening with this deadline in place?
Well, things have been pretty interesting.
I bet.
Former President Trump actually granted TikTok a second 75-day extension.
So the can's been kicked down the road.
Exactly. The first extension was set to expire just a few days ago, actually, and then he went on Truth Social saying we don't want TikTok to go dark and expressed his hope to, close the deal with TikTok in China.
Sounds like he's really trying to make something work.
It seems that way, yeah. Like his administration's actively trying to get an American company to take over so the app can stay running.
Okay, but Trump also said that the deal requires more work to ensure all the necessary approvals are signed, so it's not a done deal.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is how ByteDance is responding. They've acknowledged these discussions, but they're very clear that nothing is final, yet no agreement has been reached.
Yes, it takes two to tango.
Right. And they make another important point. They say that there are key matters to be resolved, and any agreement has to be approved under Chinese law.
Oh, so it's not just up to the U.S.
Nope. There's a whole other layer of complexity there.
So much for a quick resolution, then.
Well, there might have been one a while back. Actually, reports suggest that a deal was almost finalized, but then things fell apart.
Oh, what happened?
This was last Wednesday after Trump announced those new global tariffs, remember?
Oh, yeah, including those on China.
Exactly. And apparently, ByteDance told the White House that China wouldn't greenlight the deal unless those tariff negotiations were part of the conversation.
So everything's connected.
It really is. It shows how even seemingly unrelated things can have a huge impact.
I guess in a globalized world, everything is kind of related.
Pretty much. And to give you even more context on this, the previous agreement had supposedly already gotten the okay from investors ByteDance and the U.S. government.
So they were ready to go.
It seemed that way, but then China pulled back because of the tariffs. Even the Chinese embassy released a statement against anything that violates the basic principles of the market economy.
Complicated stuff.
Very, and it shows how different national interests and economic policies all play into this situation.
For sure. And while we're talking about different perspectives, we should mention the arguments against banning TikTok altogether.
Oh, definitely.
A lot of people bring up freedom of speech concerns and the impact this would have on creators and businesses who rely on the platform.
Right. It's not a simple issue.
Not at all. And with that deadline still looming, the search for American buyers continues.
Absolutely. And one company that's been mentioned is Amazon.
Oh, wow. So a potential tech giant stepping in.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Definitely. So let's try and summarize this for everyone. What are the key things we've learned?
All right. So the big takeaway is that the U.S. government has some serious concerns about TikTok. Having a Chinese company own such a popular app is a big deal for them, especially from a national security standpoint.
And that led to this whole law requiring ByteDance to either sell or face a ban.
Right. And although the Trump administration is trying to work out a deal and has granted extensions, things are really complex.
Yeah, finding a buyer and agreeing on terms is one thing, but then there's potential pushback from the Chinese government and all these other global factors to consider.
Like those tariffs we talked about, yeah.
Exactly. So the future of TikTok in the U.S. is still up in the air despite all these efforts.
Definitely a story to keep an eye on, for sure.
For sure. Well, on that note, this whole situation brings up a really interesting question. With technology and social media being so global these days, What happens when governments try to control or restrict access to certain platforms?
That is a good question.
You know, is it about national security or economic policies, or is it something else entirely? It's something to think about as this whole saga continues to unfold.
I think you've given everyone a lot to consider, for sure.
Well, hopefully it's helpful food for thought. Anyway, thanks for joining me today, and thanks to all of you for listening.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Until next time, stay informed.
And stay curious.
We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.
Yes.